Hello and welcome to the midweek video. We get up to verse 4 where David says, even though I'm walking through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid. And you know, it's interesting that David says, when I walk through the darkest valley. It's not if, but when. And David, he experienced some of life's extreme difficulties. He walked through many dark valleys. Many dark valleys in terms of difficulties, people hunting him. He knew desperate times in his life. And yet in those desperate times, even though they were coming up, he said, even when I'm walking through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid. Why? Because the Lord, my shepherd, goes with me. His promise of his presence in all and every circumstance of life. And so David says that when I'm going through those dark valleys, when life is so difficult, when pressures are against me, when I'm really feeling under the cosh, as it were, I will not be afraid because the Lord, my shepherd, is with me. And you know, the presence of God is just wonderful in the sense of the peace and the comfort that it can bring us when we're going through the valleys, the dark valleys of life. And we all hit them. It's not if we hit them, but when we hit them. And it'll be different for all of us, what they might be. But in the midst of all that, in the darkness, we can know the presence of God that brings us comfort. And you know, when you think about a child, when a child's in bed and it's woke up, it's been having a nightmare, it's unsettled, it's afraid, what does he do? It calls out for one of its parents. And when the mum or the dad sits on the bed and says, it's okay, I'm here, what happens? The child relaxes. The child becomes at peace. The child is comforted. Because why? Because the parent is there with them. Their presence is enough. And you know, God promises his presence to us when we go through the darkest valleys. There are the dark valleys of difficulties and problems that come our way. But, you know, the darkest valley is often seen as death. And when we walk through that valley, which we're all going to do, it is a statistic that can't be denied. 1 out of 1 people die. And as we journey through that valley, again, we have the promise of God's presence. If our faith and trust is in him, we have this wonderful assurance that God will journey with us. And what is really interesting to notice is that David doesn't say, and when I walk into the darkest valley, you are with me, but when I walk through the darkest valley. And you know, that is the thing for believers, that death does not have the final word. That's why Christ died on the cross. He conquered sin and he conquered death for all time. And so for those who have our trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, we enter the valley of death, the darkest valley, but we journey through it. We don't stop in it. We keep journeying on. And this is one of the great assurances that David has for us. And one of the great comforts that comes to us all is this fact that when we go through the valley, the dark valley, when we pass through it, be that suffering, be that problems, be difficulties or whatever it be, or it be the darkest valley, that of death itself. There is no time on that journey when the Lord, the Good Shepherd, will desert us. His promise is his presence will go with us. So whatever it is you're facing, you may be very well at this moment in time going through a dark valley. Look and ask that God would come by his presence and bring you the comfort and the peace that you need. God bless.